This is All Ears.
Drop the beat, drop the beat, drop the beat, drop the beat, beat, drop the 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 beat, beat.
I'm Everett Hopfner, pianist, new music explorer, and host of this podcast. On each episode of All Ears, you will hear conversations with my musical friends, mentors, and the many people who inspire me. My guest for episode number 16 is Sara Glojnarić. She's an emerging Croatian composer who's exploring very conceptual directions in her latest works. Sara joined me at my old kitchen table in Stuttgart for a nice chat before we both headed to our respective home countries for the summer. Here is that conversation. Well, Sara, let me officially welcome you then to the podcast, and thank you for coming along this journey.
Yeah, of course, thank you.
Tell me about where you grew up.
So, I was born and raised in Zagreb, in Croatia. It's the capital of Croatia. And, I grew up in a family that is very musical. And I mean, most of, my father's side of the family, they're all musicians. My grandpa, who is really big in Croatia, actually, he's a conductor, but during the 50s, 60s, and 70s, he was a jazz drummer, a really fantastic one with Zagreb Jazz Quartet. And at the time, they were like the biggest Yugoslavian jazz stars. They were really the Yugoslavian export culture item, They played all around the world. And I think his heritage really translated to my entire family, basically. My grandma is a former ballerina. She also studied at the Music Academy in Zagreb for a short time. My father, who is not a musician, but plays all the time, very musical. My aunt also. So, music has been in my family since forever, and I was sort of caught up with that.
What kind of music? I mean, classical music world, essentially, or?
I would say more jazz. I didn't have any contact with classical music until I started music school when I was seven
Okay.
or 7.5, something like that. What we were listening at home was mostly jazz and mostly really good rock. My father really took a lot of effort to present me with the best music possible. So he's a diehard Deep Purple fan, and Yes, and what else? I don't know. Pink Floyd. Oh God, I think he would give his arms for Pink Floyd. So this is the kind of music I grew up with, and also really good hip hop from the early 80s, mid 80s, and early 90s. That's something that my father loved, and I can see now how this is impacting my work, my current work, which I find really weird and really cool at the same time.
When you say hip-hop, is this American hip-hop, or was there an underground scene happening in Croatia that you were...
I mean, there was an underground Croatian scene, but my father was focused more on the American hip-hop, really proper, good... the perfectly produced hip-hop with cool lyrics and very sort of socially aware and stuff.
Okay. Fun.
Yeah.
So you started musical school at 7?
Yeah.
In what capacity?
We have this system of music schools. At first you start this, let's say, music kindergarten, which lasts from 6 months up to 2 years. And then you start the elementary music school, which is parallel to your normal elementary school where you learn all of your subjects. And then you go to the music high school, which is 4 years, and all of this you're doing parallelly with your normal schools. So all of the musicians in Croatia are sort of used to going to 2 schools. It can be quite stressful at times, but I think it works quite nice because you have really good education from both.
And will you have lessons every day then?
It depends. Now, when you're a kid, you don't have lessons every day. But as I grew older, and when I was approximately 11 or 12, I started having more and more lessons because I wanted to really prepare for music high school.
Sure.
And, at the time I was playing piano. And I started doing some competitions. So of course the preparation for the lessons had to be better and more extensive. So that meant essentially, yeah, every day after school until late in the evening we would have music lessons. Yeah.
And so piano was your early kind of connection to music?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I started with piano with a wonderful teacher who I had this teacher since I was 7 until the end of my high school.
Wow.
Yeah, but I think he alone is responsible for me doing music in the first place, because he's an incredibly educated person and is fantastic with kids. And just simply knows how to work with people, and it was just a pleasure. I mean, he was, when I wanted to quit when I was 15 and 16 and 17, and when everything was crap and I didn't want to do it, then he would patiently sit and say, yeah, but I think you should do this because it's like, well, what else would you do,
I've known you primarily as a composer. So when and how did composition start entering into your musical practice?
It started actually quite early. It started, I have to say, with my dad. Although my mom always says, she always likes to tell this story, that when I was, I don't know, like 3 or 4 or something like that, she asked me, so Sara, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then, as every kid would probably say, I want to be an actress, I want to be a hairdresser, something like that, something that from your daily life. I said, I want to be a composer. But I used a German word, which is also weird. I said, I'm going to say this in Croatian, ja želim biti komponist. And we don't use this word in Croatian at all. So that was also a bit weird. And my mom also says, always says, like from that time, that was sort of your first, how do you say, like impulse for becoming a composer. And then approximately, I don't know, like 5 years later, because my father, he's a programmer, he's a computer guy. And then I grew up also with a lot of computers. And at the time, when I was approximately 9 or 10, he just bought Magic's Music Maker. It's like a music, software. And he bought a lot of CDs with different samples. And all the samples work as Legos. You can just, you have to get the key right and the rhythm right, and then you just connect them basically. So it was Lego for me, but in a totally different way. And I think I really learned how to operate with material, even though that was pop and funk and stuff like this. But my earliest experience with composing or assembling music was basically from Magic's Music Maker. And then I started doing my first pieces when I was 12 or 13, and then when I was 15 and started music high school, I had the fortune to work with a teacher who was still a professor at the Music Academy, and basically he really taught me all of the important stuff, how to improvise, how to get your ideas on the piano, first of all, how to have your body respond to what you are thinking, and eventually how to write it down on paper. I mean, of course, it's a skill that always needs practice and needs development and update. But he was a very, very, very crucial person I would say for my studies in general, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't probably study composition. I would either study piano or something entirely different.
Let's talk about your current educational path. You are pursuing a bachelor's degree now?
Yeah, I started bachelor's degree back in 2009. And I was studying in Croatia for 3.5 to 4 years. And then I decided to do Erasmus in Stuttgart here. And basically, yeah, when I came to Stuttgart, the quality of studies and the opportunities you have here as a student are incredible, and I decided to stay. So I transferred completely from Zagreb to Stuttgart.
What differences did you notice between compositional studies between the two countries?
I mean, the difference is huge, obviously. The contemporary music scene in Croatia is still very traditional, although we have some fantastic people who are not composers or performers, but they are organizers and in charge of sort of the most interesting and the biggest contemporary music festivals in Croatia, and they are the ones who are doing all the educating. For example, Marija Saraga, she's the executive producer of Zagreb Music Biennale, and this year she really made an incredible program, of course in cooperation with the artistic directors, but she was responsible for some part of the program. And also Davorka Begovic, who is organizing one a bit smaller festival, but nevertheless very interesting. And the concept is a bit different, so it's a bit more familiar. You know, the artists are together constantly. It's all being performed in one area in the student center, which is this like old socialistic theater complex, but it's a fantastic venue for this kind of for electronic music and for experimental contemporary music. So those are the people who are, I think, bringing new and fresh stuff to Croatia. And I'm glad that this is happening. But when I was studying there, of course, I mean, there was nice things. But in Stuttgart, those things are happening on daily basis. And then when you are here as a student who doesn't have so much experience in, you know, in many things, it was for me just enough to be here in order to have my mind blown, essentially.
Let's talk about like your daily life right now in Stuttgart. So what kinds of things are you studying and what kinds of work are you exploring?
I'm studying with Martin Schüttler. I'm in his class. I started doing work that is a bit more conceptual. Actually, not a bit more, quite a bit more than my previous work. And I'm currently working on multiple projects, but the project that is taking away sort of all of my creative power is the one where I'm going to use smells as the material, let's say, for making the installation. And I'm going to use different kinds of smells that we all know. For example, like the smell of baby powder, the smell of gasoline, the smell of coffee, the smell of thunderstorm, because there is a company in the United States and they are synthesizing all of these smells because they are previously analyzing the smells, of course, of, I don't know, thunderstorm, rain, or dirt, or all of these kind of smells, and they bottle it. And I'm very, very excited to do this project. It's still in a very young phase, in a very beta phase, but it's going to be most probably performed in January in our school as an installation that is going to be a part of the Backshots Festival.
And I just realized I may have been assuming something all this time.
Yeah.
I just imagined that there will be a sound element going along with this.
Yeah.
So you.
Yeah.
I just thought. Yeah. Wait a minute, I don't think I actually ever got an explanation on this. So you will be writing some sort of musical or sound thing to go with the smells.
Yeah. Then again, I'm not sure if it's going to be sound or it's going to be video.
Okay.
I still have to make that decision. And another project that I'm working on is for a clarinetist, Gleb Kanasevic from the United States. He's a part of a trio that is just starting a new contemporary music festival in Croatia, and they essentially chose me and two other Croatian composers as composers in residence of some sort. And I will write a piece for him, and it's all sort of based on what Marina Abramovic did in the MoMA in New York. The artist is present where she was sitting in a room in the museum, and people just came and sat opposite of her and just they looked in each other's eyes for 1 minute. And I thought it's an incredibly simple concept, but extremely strong as well. Because they were almost forced, but they weren't because they did it themselves, to be essentially completely naked in front of somebody they don't know. And I found that concept really, really interesting, and this is something that I want to use also for my piece. I'm still not sure how, but there's probably Skype going to be involved and some recordings, and the idea is basically for clarinetist or a person who is performing to tell me a secret and to see how far we can go with that and how am I able to be intimate, and is he or she able to be intimate, and sort of the relationship in between.
Sara, you're working in a very conceptual space, so I wonder, how do you fight the impulse to want to explain everything you're doing to an audience?
I think people find it extremely weird, but then if you spend 2.5 minutes of explaining what you're doing, then it's clear. And people who are not musically educated, who are, I don't know, doctors, lawyers, whatever, especially other artists, they are so open. And for them, like, everything is allowed. Because you are setting the limit to them. They have no reference point. And I think this things is much more difficult to explain to musicians who have been playing Bach or Beethoven their entire life. And now you have to explain to them, yeah, I'm going to, I don't know, put nails in the piano, you know, and it's like, well, but why? Why are you doing this, you know? Whereas to a person who doesn't have any experience, you say, yeah, I'm going to put a nail in the piano. Oh, cool. How does it sound? You know?
Yeah.
So that's what I find interesting, and sometimes I prefer to hear the opinion of a person who is not educated than to a person who is, because they're sort of infiltrated with different ideas, and I don't necessarily trust those ideas always. And I've heard many people say that contemporary music concerts were much more interesting to them than, you know, typical philharmonic orchestra playing, I don't know, Brahms fourth, or, you know, and then Tchaikovsky first and something like this. This typical program, I think it's a museum art, it's beautiful, and when somebody's playing it well, I mean, it goes directly to the heart, which is fantastic. But I think, at least with me, new music just resonates so much more because it's closer to me. I can understand it, actually.
How do you describe your location? Do you say I'm a Croatian based in Germany, or are you a dual pendler? How do you describe your current circumstance?
Croatian based in Germany.
Okay.
Yeah, I still have very strong, I wouldn't say national feelings, but since I left for Germany, I sort of looked back and saw that things are not as bad in Croatia that I thought they were, and I still essentially can't wait to come back, at least, you know, over the summer holidays. So I feel very much as a Croat, but also very, very happy that I have the opportunity to be in Germany and to live here for, of course, as long as possible. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. It seems to me also that you've done a good job of staying connected to the scene in Croatia. Can you maybe talk about some of the projects you've done in the last year or so that have kept you connected to your hometown?
Sure. I was a guest on 2 festivals in Croatia. One of those is Zagreb Music Biennale that I mentioned earlier. The festival commissioned a piece from me for cello and voice. So I went there, that was, I think, March, April. And then essentially 2 or 3 weeks later, I was a guest on another festival where I performed the Facebook piece Straight from the Fingertips that was performed last year here in Stuttgart.
What's your experience like when you go back to Croatia? What do you tell them about what you're doing here?
I'm telling them the truth.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I'm telling them what I'm doing here, but I think at least like all of my friends and all of my teachers who I'm still in contact with can see a big change in me, both on personal and professional level, because it does change you. First, it changes you. Just to change the place where you live, it already changes you, especially if it's a place that is far away from home. I mean, you know that, you understand that very well. In a place where you don't speak the language, where you really have to be responsible for yourself. That influences your professional life because you get much more responsible towards your commitments and to your obligations, because nobody's going to do it for you and you're really on your own and you have to prove yourself. So in that way, it changed me a lot. And I think my friends and colleagues in Croatia are very much aware of that. And also the pieces I've started to work on here are almost polar opposites to what I've been doing before. So they can also hear simply a big difference, and I'm very happy about that. And what I'm also happy about is that it's being accepted quite well, even though it's maybe a bit weird for the contemporary music scene in Croatia, but people still have their minds open, which just goes to show that there is a huge potential in Croatia that is being not explored to the maximum. But it is there, and with people like that I mentioned earlier, people who want to bring really cool people to work here, to have some concerts, I think the Croatian contemporary scene can just explode in the next 5 or 10 years.
We have a recurring feature on the podcast that we will today call Mr. Rogers was a nice person and some other people are also nice. So, can you tell me a story about somebody who's helped you along your musical journey to where you are today?
My first composition teacher, Krešimir Saletković, he is currently the artistic director of Zagreb Music Biennale and the teacher on Music Academy in Zagreb. I was working with him, as I said, since I was 15 until I was 18. And somewhere around the age of 17, I was fed up. I was done with music. I wanted to go and study history of art and French, something very, very sort of floaty. And I was about to quit. And if I did that, I think I would make really the biggest mistake of my life. I don't care how pathetic it sounds, but it is true. And my teacher noticed that something is wrong, and then I asked him, okay, can we please meet in this cafe? And we did, and I was sort of preparing myself to tell him, thank you for everything, but I'm done, and, I just don't want to study music anymore. And what he did, he didn't even allow me to say that. What he did instead, he ordered 2 beers. And at the time, even though I was smoking, but I was very, very sort of cautious that nobody sees me. But of course he knew. He took out a pack of cigarettes and put it put it on the table and said, go. And I had a beer, I had a cigarette, and I was smoking like a maniac, just getting really drunk and really emotional. And just saying all these things. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I can't be a world-class pianist. I don't know if I want to compose. I should just study something else. What am I going to do with piano? I will not be able to work. I will not be, all of these things that are just really occupying your mind. And he was really patient and he listened to almost 1.5 hours of my rant. And then he just looked at me and he said, you can do whatever you want, of course. But if you don't study composition, you're going to fuck up your life. And that was his comment. And I was just so shocked because I didn't expect such a comment from him. And, I was startled, didn't know what to do. And then we started to speak about it, a bit more. And he started to scratch the surface even more and more and more and more. But the end of that conversation, I was like, okay, good. So when is the entrance exam for composition? That was it. So I think, even though our relationship has sort of varied through years, but I am still incredibly thankful for him and for that moment and for this moment of clarity and humanity from his side, because he shouldn't have done it, he didn't have to do it because I was a 17-year-old student and he was a teacher at the Academy of Music. Why would he actually spend 3.5 hours of his time to speak with, ranting teenager, But I'm really, really thankful, and I think that really changed my path.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he realized too that at one point in time he was the ranting teenager, or every great musician we've ever seen has at one point in time been that ranting teenager, and it's something that we all have to go through in order to get to whatever level we attain. And it's not like the doubts ever go away. There's still doubts about how am I going to fit in this big world of music, and how can I compete with all these other huge names out there? But that starts to matter less, where it's not about how I fit in with this, it's just how do I do myself to the best of my ability.
Exactly. exactly.
Just helping people get to that level of understanding, I think, is, we've all had those people, and it's so special.
Yeah, it's very rewarding.
That's so cool. Finally, how can the listeners of this podcast keep up with you and keep up with what your projects are?
They can keep up with me on my SoundCloud page. It's Sara Glojnarić. My nickname is my name, so that's not really difficult to find. And I'm about to launch my website, so it's still in progress. I think everybody who has ever done a website know how much work there is.
Yep.
I thought it was going to be done so soon, but
Nope.
It's really a project on its own, and you have to be very dedicated to it. So I'm in the process of doing that, and once it's going to be online, of course, I'm going to notify everybody.
And I shall notify the same. I'll put the link to your SoundCloud up on the show notes of this page, and everyone can follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, or on my website, and we will know when Sara's website is up and running.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Everett.
Thank you so much for doing this. It's a lot of fun.
Drop the beat, drop the beat, drop the beat, drop the beat. Drop the beat, drop the beat.
Well, look at that. We have reached the end of another episode of All Ears. Thank you so much for listening, as always. You can follow me on Twitter at evhopf, that's EVHOPF, and you can follow the show at This Is All Ears. You can subscribe to the podcast via iTunes or Stitcher. Just follow the links at everetthopfner.com. While you're there, you can leave some feedback and review the show. It really helps All Ears find more ears. Explore the archive of past episodes, and make sure to check out the show notes and links posted on the website. I'll also be publishing some blog posts and some new recordings in the coming weeks, so keep checking it out. I posted a blog a couple days ago about my time in Italy this past summer and a wonderful concert I was able to be a part of. I had a great time, and I'd like to share with you how great it was, so give it a read if you're interested. All Ears will be back in September. Talk to you then.